My name is Nick B, and let's jump into this week's futures overview. So let's start with the Forex Factory economic calendar. Monday, we don't have much news. It is a pretty fundamentally heavy week. Tuesday, we have consumer confidence and JOLTS job openings at 10. Wednesday, ADP non-farm employment change, employment cost, 8:15, 8:30. We might see some swings, might give us an idea of what the market might do into open and then into the 10 a.m. churn. Then at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, we have the federal funds rate, FOMC statement, and the FOMC press conference to 2 to 2:30. Thursday, that's going to be a big mover. Thursday we have OPEC all day, so maybe we'll have eyes on crude. Maybe we'll see something worthwhile there. That started to move last week. Last week it finally broke out of its range. We'll take a look at it on the session. And 8:30 we have unemployment claims, ISM manufacturing PMI at 10 a.m. Friday we have our average hourly earnings at 8:30, non-farm employment change, unemployment rate, and then 10 a.m. we have the revised consumer sentiment. Okay, so we have a pretty heavy fundamental week. Good. It'll give us some volatility because this has been an interesting market. Uh, X out here. Share with the Discord guys. Okay, so let's start with. Let's blow this up. Let's start with ES. Let's start with our favorite. Last week, that was our first red week. That sucked, but I understood that if I continued to try to hammer anything in between the levels that we were at, I was just asking for trouble. So I cut myself off and we'll revisit right now with a fresh slate. Let me blow this up 3 years. Okay, so what do we know? We know that the last base that we broke out of on ES was 46.30 right here. We have the contracts rolled over, we have this gap. Um, that's going to be kind of that pullback target. Maybe we get a clean retest to get a continuation. Otherwise, technically, this looks like a flaw here. Because, yeah, sure, we broke out of this area, surged, and at most maybe, the first come around is going to be at 48.40, but I really would like to see 46.30 to kind of solidify this area to show us that we can hold it, and then we can get a continuation. Let's mark off some levels now. And again, we don't want to be messy, so let's mark off the important ones. This all-time high right here at 48.08. That's going to serve us more or less as a guidance level, so I'm going to leave that red. 46.30, that's going to be ultimately our target, mostly to the downside, the first take profit. I think we'll dip a little bit lower under it if we come up to that area, possibly maybe 45.65 I think is fair. 4500 is even fair, but 4500 is, I would say, extreme. That's very, very aggressive. 45.65 to 46.30, that's a fair pullback area if and when we get there. We're just stemming kind of this downside here because I do believe that if we do start pulling back and we do start coming down for a retest, we're going to cover the retest area, but at first I want to talk about kind of like that long-term outlook, and the bigger time frames really are the guys that are going to paint us in the direction that we'll take on. So again, the ultimate base is really 46.30. That's essentially what's holding up this entire move up, since on the daily, when we broke out above it, when we squeezed above it, we technically never even came down to retest even the gap up open, which was, let's see, oops, the open was right here, 46.60. We never really, I mean, the second daily came down to retest it. But again, this is an area of concern. Why did we not retest it? Why did we not solidify it? And yet here we are. So what I think is going to happen possibly into the next few weeks is either we're going to come down to retest this 48.40 area. It was a previous all-time high, and ironically just so happens to be our 20-day EMA on the daily, so that's good. That kind of just solidifies that 48.40 is going to be that first base support that we're going to test to the downside. If we manage to bounce off of it, we might see more upside. We might see maybe a push towards 4900, again 4950 to 5000, but I'm not really leaning that way. I'm gonna make 48.40 yellow as well because I think it's gonna be a more important level than 48.08. 48.40, I think if and when we do get down to this area and break it, I think that's going to be the first sign that we're probably going to start aiming for the previous higher lows of 47.50. Below 47.50, I would look at 4700. Below 4700, we can, I don't want to say the word assume, but we can kind of expect the probabilities of us seeing 4630 a little more higher after we get those levels. Again, I'm going to leave these levels alone because it's going to look different on the smaller time frames. And again, 4808 is really going to be kind of like a guidance level. Let me change the color of it up so I know. When I say guidance, that means if we do manage to pull back below 4840, it's not going to be a green light to short or continue to short unless we get below those previous all-time highs of 48.08, because what this could kind of suggest is if we stay above this level is the dip will get bought and we might head back up higher again. To avoid that risk, we want to see at least a close below 48.08 to assume that we have that room and the probabilities are in our favor that we're going to touch up on 47, 46, 47.50 area again, because on the daily it's a higher low. Higher low, higher high in an uptrend. Usually, when price starts to kind of react in terms of direction, that's what it targets. That's how we kind of come up with these targets of support, targets of resistance, based on, well, at least me, based on previous higher lows, higher highs, previous lower highs, and lower lows. That's how I kind of determine where it is that price action is going to go. So, again, we covered that on the daily. Now let's break this down to the smaller time frames because to get a better idea of what might happen intraday. So we know that everything in the area basically right now from 4900 basically to 4934, you can't touch it. You can only kind of guess. You can assume that maybe we bounce off the 20-day EMA and we come back up to 49.34. But price action from last week at least proved to us that if you do attempt to try to take a hit on these swings, I mean, it's not going to make it easy for you. Your conviction may be right, but it's going to hurt you in the process unless you have a really wide stop. And, in order for you to kind of scrape some kind of points out of price action here, I mean, your risk to reward ratio would have to be kind of bad. It would be a 1 to 2 risk to reward. You're risking $20 to make 10. Not my cup of tea. So again, that's kind of why we cut it off early last week and just let's see kind of what happens into this week and identify the channels that we may or may not be kind of dancing in between. So again, 4900 is that round number. It's a psychological support resistance level. Sure, as long as we can hold above it, maybe that can give us more upside. Again, even if we do get above 4934, which is our all-time highs right now, maybe we have room to come up to 4950. Maybe we'll see 5000, but this is kind of like a mania market at this point. I really don't know how much more room can we squeeze higher in that area that we're at. But a good phrase to kind of keep us in check, well, keep me in check, is the market can stay rational longer than we can be solvent. So let's see what happens on the break. ES again, the base I would say is 48.90 to 48.73 right here. And you see how it's kind of like a dodgy area. Sure, we could break below, for example, 48.74, but I think the green light to maybe take a bite on those shorts is if we finally get below 48.41 and stay below it. 48, yeah, that was the previous all-time highs. So if we can stay below 48.41, we can work our way down on the intraday levels, possibly down to 48.07. And again, below 48.07, that's going to give us room to kind of take a shot at 47.47. And I think this is going to be the first green light where it's going to indicate that we're probably going to start selling the rips up. So if we get that retest, for example, we break below 48, 41, come back up to it and we stay below it, that's a first sign to go short, possibly targeting 48.07. If we break below 48.07 and we come down to this level here of 47.46, unless we retest 4808, can prove that we can stay below these levels here, or at least if we do get a break of 4847 and we come down towards 4700, as long as we can remain below the higher lows and below, let's say, this navigation's previous all-time high 4807, again, I think that gives us a confident green light to short. um, and again, these are going to be my downside targets, so I guess I'm going to place my alert here at 4842. Yeah, that's fair. 4842. It's going to give me time to see that, hey, are we going to break below 4841, or are we going to bounce off of it? If we bounce, I'm not inclined to really do anything. Again, I think this entire move here is held up on sticks. Again, you could see here on the 4 hour, even when we broke above our previous all-time highs of 4841, where's the retest? Never got that. Need a retest if we want to solidify a channel and go higher. So because of that, it just raises some concerns here. So let's not try to time price action. Again, we could break this down to the 1 hour as well. And again, it might look enticing near certain supports or near certain resistance, but I don't think it's worth it to kind of throw your money in between these areas here. Technically, this is a floor, 4873 to 4900 basically, but what are you doing? You're targeting 20 points, and where's your risk? Your risk to the upside is far greater than downside. So again, that's kind of the basis why we want to sit tight here. We want to be patient because market's out right now to hurt traders. So again, let's reiterate. Upside, I'm skeptical of it. I'm not, I don't want to say we can't see 4950 or 5000. I think that's a possibility, but I'm definitely have a little bit of a bias towards downside. However, I do want the technicals to play out first. I want to lean more into price, what price action does versus what I want to see it do. So if again we get a break below 48.41 and we can remain below it, that's going to be the first shoe dropping, I think. And then ultimately what would confirm that, hey, okay, we're getting that pullback that we were kind of calling for into quarter 1 is going to be if and when we can take out 47, 48, 47.50, this area right here. And we'll go from there. Again, targeting the previous higher lows of 4700, 4750, and then again, below 4700, that's going to open us up down to 4650. Really, we want to lay eyes on 4630. If we get to that area, I don't see why we don't kind of fill this gap down to 4600, and then I say it would be fair area to start buying up hand over fist. But we'll see. We'll see when we get there, because this has been extended for quite some time. And typically, I've seen this before, when the market starts looking for ways to hurt traders, and you're like, what's going on? Technically, we're in a bull market. We're so high up. I mean, and the supports are all holding on the big picture. Why are these intraday moves so kind of volatile, so hurtful? Well, it wants to figure out what it wants to do here, because it just does not know if it can go higher, and it's not ready to go short just yet because traders aren't ready to short it. But again, we'll see this develop into this week and we'll see how it goes. Again, I don't want to say 100% bias in that, I want to short. We'll see what price action does, but I think the time is coming. The shoe's about to drop. And we just have to be patient and ready for when that happens. So that's what we got on ES. For NQ, NQ is going to be a little bit more exciting. I don't think that's a proper term to use, but NQ is definitely going to be nicer. So let's clear the drawing set and let's start. So I am on the 3-year weekly. We can go ahead and plot this level right here. Oops. Oh, I'm on the circle thing. 1 second. Okay, so this is going to be our, let's adjust this as well, the previous all-time high that we managed to break, retest, and then go higher. So it's 767. I believe it was 0.25. Okay, so we'll leave that on the weekly. Yeah, I think the daily will do a better picture of kind of showing us lower lows, lower highs, higher highs, rather than the weekly. Weekly's too much. Okay, so what can we tell just off of this level here? 16,767. Okay, so the first time we got around to it, we had a nice push up to 17,100, retested it, continued higher, could not get above 17, what, 165 was at that level, came down toward as low as 16,344, only to bounce up again, retest the 767 level to continue up towards 17,800, and now we are pulling back a bit. Okay, okay, fair. So we understand kind of what's happening. What's happening is price seems like it wants to go higher, but can it? Right? Similar story to ES. So let's go ahead and plot off this high right here of 17. It was 165. Let me just adjust that. I remember because that's also one of those levels as of recent where we broke out of as a previous all-time high session high that we broke out of, and again we have not retested it. So let's see, we have this identified now. Okay, cool. Now in terms of a pullback, because just like ES we're kind of anticipating that pullback towards 4630, I would say the equivalent of it on the NASDAQ or on par would be the 16,000 20 area. I guess I'm basing it off of this previous lower high, this previous area here where we tried to make higher highs, could not get above it, pulled back a bit to bounce off of 14,154. And then on the second or third go around, we got above it with a squeeze. And again, never retested it to solidify this area as support before kind of continuing higher. So this raises a level of concern and a possible target to the downside if we get that to play out. Now, without dirtying up the chart too much, I know we previously used previous all-time highs of 16,450, but it's different now. It's different now because we were looking for new price kind of targets in these areas based off of previous price action history here. It's different now because this is new price discovery, if you will. There's nothing here to sustain any kind of support or resistance. It's built on toothpicks, if you will. And we need to figure out what areas will be kind of that solidifying factor that we can either continue higher or we can continue lower, possibly into the pullback. So this level right here, 17,165, just so happens to line up on our 20-day EMA on the daily. Ironic. Very good. Very good. So to me, this solidifies as kind of the base of price action. If we want to go lower, we have to break below this level. And if we bounce off of this level, we may see more highs, depending if we're able to break above the previous lower highs that we make on the intraday levels, if that makes sense. So let's see. Let's break this down to the intraday because we kind of have it figured out on what's going on. So I'm also going to change this color as well to yellow. Yellow is for my direction. If we get a break below yellow, most likely you're going lower. If you get a break above yellow or a bounce on yellow, most likely you're going to see a continuation. So on the 4 hour, let's check this out. We can ignore everything here, it doesn't matter. We kind of want to focus on the nows now that we're getting more into the intraday breakdown. Why? Because we want to focus on the now. The past isn't really going to help us as much as the present. And again, when I do the technical breakdowns, I'm really looking for just a simple higher high or a higher low to base my support resistance level, and we can see that happening right here where this is our higher high right here, higher high, and then our higher lows all stem from basically this level right here of 15,724 up to 16,333 up to 16,686, basically your 16,700 area. And then the next higher low, I mean, really is 17,400 because we dipped down here as the session lows before continuing higher, and we're still holding above that level. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so I don't want to dirty up the chart, so instead, for the higher lows that we're going to use as targets to the downside, I'm going to plot alerts on them. So 16,686, that's going to be our first kind of higher low that if we do break below that level, well, we're probably going to have a green light to come down to 16,334. I'm going to set this alert a little bit higher.
16,335.
Okay. And then below 335 would ultimately give us that room where I think this is going to be that first quarter one pullback where we retest the breakout that we've had over here on the higher time frames. And then again, if we can hold it, great. We should be able to bounce out of this area because I don't see why investors would not be buying stock hand over fist in these areas. This is a great area to be picking up shares, I think. Now, if we do break below that area and we do start coming down to 15,724, 15,724 would be on par of 4,500 ES. It's an aggressive target to the downside, but it is still a possibility. It's very possible we do see that before a bounce. That would be very aggressive. But again, if we do end up breaking below 15,724, I mean, we have all this room to work our way down to 15,460, down to 15,200, below that to 14,918, and then down to 14,145. Again, I don't think that's very plausible. I think the cutoff point is right in this area here. But again, let's focus on kind of what may happen to this week. And for NQ, unlike ES, I can actually go down on the 1 hour and kind of break down the bases that we've been in. So maybe at least we can capitalize a move down towards 17,165 without waiting too much. So let's take a look at the 1 hour because on the 4 hour, again, the 4 hour right now can't tell me anything I don't know. I know that the highs are here, and I know that this was a previous high of 17,570. I know that we have a base here of 17,400, but that's about it. I need a closer look. And again, just like I mentioned previously, everything here, for the most part, it's held up on toothpicks. There's no basis for any support resistance levels. There isn't because this is new price discovery here. So let's pull up the 1 hour and let's take a look here on what we got going on. And we can see these are pretty choppy swings here, just pretty chop. So I'm going to go ahead and place an alert. Let's see, we have our support resistance level here, and I'm going to place my alert at 17,410. Now, if 17,410 breaks down and we manage to hold below that level, I think that would be a very nice short down towards, well, the first target I think would be fair to be 17,250. The reason I say that is because when we broke above the previous session highs of 17,165, it looked like a false breakout, but then when we did really break out, we made resistance at 17,252 or 255 area it was. We retested 17,165 to the T and bounced off of it beautifully. So I think this would be a proper fair target to the downside of 17,254 if and when we get a break of really 17,400. My alert is at 17,410 so that at least I'll have enough time to type up a signal and we'll go from there. Everything here in terms of upside, I don't trust it. How could you trust it, especially after last week's performance? You can only basically time the levels based off of, round number theory. So if we're slightly below 17,500, let's say, if you get a break above 17,500, maybe you could go long targeting 17,600. But again, I would not recommend that. I don't think it's sustainable, and I don't think there's any basis for support resistance levels in these areas yet. We're getting there, but not yet. These levels are going to come into play maybe in a few months again. If we do start pulling back. But in the current moment, again, maybe we see upside. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see 18,000 or 5 on NQ or 5,000 on ES, but how plausible is that in these areas already? It seems like for the last week, price action has been trying to tell us we're tired, man. We kind of are due for that pullback. So let's see what the price action gives us, and then we'll go from there. So we have our levels in mind. To reiterate on NQ, below 17,410, 17,400 would be the green light to short targeting 17,255. Below 17,255, you're probably going to come up on 17,165 again. And again, below 17,165, we can really target 16,950, maybe 17,000 as that round number to the downside. But ultimately, I think that first target to the downside is going to be also 16,767, as it was our previous all-time high about 3 years ago. This level right here. Below 17, below 16,767, we can definitely take a look at coming down towards the lower high, the higher low of 16,686, and I think that would give us the green light below 16,700 to short, targeting the next higher low of 16,335, and below 16,335, definitely probably going to come up on 16,200, then probably 1660 area right here down to 16,000. Aggressively, I would say 15,700 would be kind of the aggressive target to the downside on NQ. And for ES, I would say 4,500 would be aggressive. I would like to see those 16,000 on NQ, and I would like to see 4630. I would like to see a bounce out of that area as well. But we'll see when we get there. That is a bit of a far out scenario, but again, we're looking for direction. Um, on the big picture, again, we could come down to 17,165 and bounce off of it back up towards 17,800, maybe to come up to 18,000 on the NASDAQ. On ES, it would probably look like something where we pull back down towards 4840 and bounce off of that area and come back up towards 4,900, possibly 5,000, but not really sustainable. Other than that, last but not least, I do want to cover Crude because that was a bit of a mover last week when we had a breakout. So let's go ahead and pull this up on the daily. Okay. All right, so I don't really need to clear up much because I can go over the few levels that I have plotted here. From fresh, the reason I plotted 79.80 is when we broke down out of this area here, we came down to 74.97, and I find it interesting. We bounced up to 79.80, could not get above it, started to break down, false breakdown, came up here, retested that level again, decided to try to take another attempt at getting above 79.80, could not do it, and then we sold off below 74.97, breaking below 72.46, 72.40, coming down towards the lows of 67.76. And we've been kind of chopping here, but now we finally made that move again last week on Friday when we broke out of this 74.97 area. We were able to target 76.20, 76.13 area. Above 76.13, I was really eyeing 79.80. Now, I wouldn't do really anything in between here now that price action kind of already played out, but if we can see a break of 79.80 and a retest and see that it can hold up as a solid support, I think it's very doable that we see 83.57 to the upside. That wouldn't be, not a bad target upside. So I'm gonna do 83. I'll be a little conservative. I'll do 83.50, and that is the previous lower high in this area here. Now, if we do end up breaking back down, I mean, we have a gap to fill to the downside a bit, but if we do come down to 74.97 and break below it, I'm not so sure I'd be inclined to short just because of, look at this on the daily, what Crude has been doing. It would have to be a swing trade where we have a decent sizable stop loss, and our target ultimately would have to be 69.33. I'm not really comfortable with that. That doesn't sound fair. The other thing in terms of as you know, I like to look at previous higher highs, higher lows, lower highs, lower lows. As you can see right here, these were the lows, and then we started to make higher lows. This is technically a higher low from these lows. And the fact that we broke out of this area here now, this is a higher high. Now, it's really about, do we reject this previous lower high and make and come down to make higher lows before trying to break above this level again and make higher highs so that the trend continues higher? or do we just chop between this area here? So I'm definitely, for the next move, for the next real move that I could see at least is, can we get above 79.80? And if we can, as long as we hold it, we should be able to target the previous lower highs of 83.50. Other than that, I mean, that's all she wrote. I hope you have a solid trading week ahead, and we'll catch you into the week. Cheers.